And unfortunately, there's 80% or more, depending on the data set that you look, of individuals that would be classified as being what you like to term, Phil, overfat. So maybe define overfat.
I saw the word overfat in a journal article back in the 70s, and I thought, this is a great word. And I had a sense that, obesity wasn't applicable to athletes, and this idea of being overweight was, we weren't measuring much of anything except water, and that the problem was fat. It was excess fat. And so I started using overfat, and define overfat. And I wanted to define underfat also, because people were still very sensitive when you used the word overfat. They thought you were calling them fat. We need a certain amount of fat to be healthy. There's that window of healthy fat, and if we're below that, we're underfat and unhealthy.
Yeah. And that's the theory, though, isn't it? Is that you're at a level of fat that is unhealthy. Simple. That is the term. Yep. That is the term overfat. So it's like you've got an excess of fat and it's impairing your health. That's what it is. And that's drifted into being so-called overweight or obese. And it's a real problem, because you think about the energy resource that's sitting in these locations where the individual, they're just not able to tap into this amazing energetic resource that they could do metabolic work for. And unfortunately, it just, whether individual, we're all athletes, right? But the individual is blocked ultimately from going to do
and
this from
the other
a
big
hormonal
thing,
standpoint, I guess.
Is the fact that excess body fat produces chronic inflammation and insulin resistance, and that becomes a vicious cycle. But those factors, that cycle, is the first stage of chronic disease. So heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, most of the chronic disease that people are dying from today begin way back there with the overfat condition. And that, I think, is such an important thing. It's really the model of modern disease.
So fast forward to today, and the world's opening up, and a question from one of my colleagues within Hit Science. He had a question for you, and I'm not sure if you're aware, Phil, but this is just there's so many people that are getting sick now within sport, and so the question is, why are there so many people just getting sick, whether they're ill as coaches, support staff, or athletes themselves?
Getting infected is nothing new for humans. It's been happening from the beginning, and we have this amazing, wonderful immune system that protects us really, really well. And when we trash our immune system, we're not protected very well. And it doesn't take much to say, oh, gee, I wonder what the immune system is doing in an overfat person. And we could see the cells in the immune cells that are residing in fat cells that are dysfunctional, that we can look at and say, here's the immune system of an overfat person, and here's the immune system of a person who has normal body fat, which is very functional. This is the problem, and of being unhealthy. And when you use overfat as a guide to say, okay, how many people are unhealthy in this population? It's astounding how many people are unhealthy. And so the fact that, and athletes are not immune because they're athletes. They're immune if they're healthy. But if they're not healthy, then they're not immune. And one just has to go to a a running race, a triathlon, um, uh, an American or European football match, any sport, literally any sport, and look at the people who are competing. There's so many of them who are overfat, and I'm also including professionals.
I guess I just wondered if it was anything to do also with the evolution of the bugs or whatnot that are around, the fact that everyone clammed up, social distanced, went back into their homes for a year or more, and then all of a sudden got back to life. Whether there's some sort of cycle of, I don't know, stuff that's going on there that contribute. There's certainly a lot of anecdotally in my circles. There's just a lot of people.
There's been an emphasis on long COVID, and that concept is nothing new. We've had it for ages. We see it with Lyme disease, and it's the same. A lot of them are the same features, contain the same features as a lot of the other Epstein-Barr, a whole host of conditions where scientists and clinicians don't know where to put them, but they all have some common denominators, and the common denominator is overfat. But another important common denominator is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And when you look at the mechanism and the signs and symptoms, how people recover, how people don't recover, it's pretty clear that HPA axis is a big part of this. I wrote a general article about that, which is on my website. If you search long COVID and long Lyme, you'll probably find it, and give some recommendations on how to improve the HPA axis through a healthy diet and through healthy exercise or resting in some cases, because a lot of athletes who are in this category are really overtrained, and which is a perfect place for the utilization of something like walking. You can maintain movement without taxing the HPA axis. And allow the body to heal.
So every single person listening to this, there's relevance to this issue, and everyone that you know, everyone that you meet, and your athletes too. So how can we, what are some of the best ways to assess the problem
simplest
of overfat
way,
in an individual?
We don't want to do a DEXA scan every month. We don't want to, the simplest way is to measure your waist at the level of the belly button. Measure your height. Don't look at your license, because most of those numbers are wrong. And your waist should be less than half your height. It's that simple. If not, you're overfat.